Now, currently, Disney and the board members are really crafting a lot of different ideas behind closed doors to really deliver something very unique to the fans and to really also bring the fans together and finding avenues to reunite the overall community in a way that fans would never even imagine. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing that has been going on behind the scenes over at Disney and Lucasfilm is between George, John, and Dave really crafting all these different ideas by bringing back Star Wars Legends and finding ways that they're going to be able to do this in a very accurate way. And really a lot of this has to do with changing elements of the sequels. Now, Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, was able to briefly talk more about this and exactly what he is currently planning with both John and Dave, and how they're going to really be able to level things out for the overall roadmap of the Star Wars universe. Now, as you all know, we're going to be getting a couple of announcements at Star Wars Celebration for this upcoming roadmap, as well as at D23, that's going to stretch things even further. We also have the earnings calls that will be done on a quarterly basis, stuff around those lines to make further announcements on top of all of this. Now, with that being all put out there, one thing that Bob Iger had to talk about had a lot to do with breaking the canon of the sequel trilogy movies and exactly what this really means for the future of Star Wars and specifically what it means for John and Dave's work by bringing back Star Wars Legends front and center. So let's tap into exactly what Bob Iger had to say, what he was able to kind of deliver to the fans, and what it really kind of tells us for the overall structure of Star Wars and where it's going. Now, with that being of course put out there, Disney is currently reshaping Lucasfilm as a company and how they will be handling the Star Wars franchise. It's noted in a recent interview provided by Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, he went on to actually reveal details about his plans with John and Dave on how it's going to impact the sequels. Iger went on to inform the following to fans. We are having many meetings every single week on how to handle the lore and what fans like to call the canon in these stories, and one thing myself, John, and Dave agreed on was by breaking some of the existing canon in the sequels that we created and left off with back in 2019. We feel it's a necessary step in order to keep our opportunities open for what fans like to call legends, and though I may not be all that knowledgeable with the legends stuff, I trust John and Dave's knowledge over their material to use in their upcoming installments. And by breaking sequel canon, it gives us more room to explore different adventures for your fan favorite characters. Now let me just pause here for 1 second. Now we know that breaking canon is really something that can either be used in a very good way or a very bad way. And I think that when you look at examples of what's been done with The Acolyte by Leslie Headland and Kathleen Kennedy, it was done in a terrible way because it is completely just dismantling the Phantom Menace. We talked about this just yesterday of how a lot of things are being changed about the Jedi Order and the Jedi Council, stuff like that. But when you dive deeper into what Bob Iger is saying here is that basically their approach is to split up pieces of the canon that are very controversial in the sequel trilogy movies to kind of create more room to tell the Legends content stories more accurately to how it was done back in the 90s, the 2000s, and even the early 2010s. We all know that the last Legends book was Crucible back in 2013, right around when Disney took over Lucasfilm, alright? So that was the last Legends book that featured Luke, Han, and Leia, by the way. And that brings us to the next big thing, is that Bob Iger has also been, putting it out there that he has extensive plans on making sure that they do the right thing, that they take a lot of time on their thought processing on how exactly Legends is going to be executed in the live-action projects, and even some in the animated projects, what kind of characters they want to explore, what kind of adventures they want to adapt from the books, stuff around those lines, right? We already know that Star Wars Ahsoka is going to be literally an adaptation of one of the Trilogy books from the 1990s, and that's a big deal too. They already have Timothy Zahn speaking with Jon Favreau on the set of the Ahsoka series at one point in time back then, and that really was a big telltale also that they really are doing a lot of great stuff with Thrawn and this new Dark Jedi that's coming into the picture. So on top of this, he goes on to state, "We had a conversation with George about this approach of ours, and it's something that he endorsed and agrees with us on. So we couldn't be more excited for what's coming out of this finally. Fans will be able to know exactly how we will be restructuring and resurrecting the legends and reframing the sequel canon by next year in specifics, but right now it's still a work in progress, and we are working hard at making everything just make sense to the entire community. John is building a very talented team for this purpose alone to remap the timeline of this massive franchise that we have the great opportunity and so many possibilities to head into. It's truly something exciting for us here at Disney as part of our rethinking strategy to do something different for the fans." Now, I want to stop here real quick because one thing that we do know about when it comes to Legends is that Legends is a very interesting side of Star Wars. There's a lot to tell in there, and there's a lot of different paths you could really take when it comes to Luke, when it comes to, of course, other characters embedded in there like Boba Fett, stuff around those lines. What I like about this is that they're really splitting the canon, like he likes to say, in the sequels, and that's going to give them a lot more opportunities to have really more what they like to call breathing room in their new timeline of Star Wars. Now, we already know, and we talked about this, that Star Wars Ahsoka Season 2 is going to play a massive role in really resetting the canon and shifting things around. And it's no coincidence that the World Between Worlds is going to be a major focus in Season 2, so it most likely has something to do with that, without a doubt. That most likely has something to do with it, and is going to really be a major player in changing the canon of the sequels. It's the only logical way to go about doing it, right? I mean, if you think about it, that really is the best logical way to really change the universe when it comes to Star Wars, literally in-universe, instead of out-universe on a creator's table. So, obviously, this is a very, touchy thing that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are dealing with. They have to make sure that they don't really make a mistake, or they don't make a lot of problems that come out of this. They have to make sure that it's going to give them the right amount of space in the timeline to accurately portray Legends the way that they want to. And thankfully, they have George Lucas signing off on a lot of this, because after all, this is the guy that approved a lot of things about Legends books, comics, whatever it may have been back then, in order to really retell a lot of those different stories. So, anyways, with that being all put out there, fill me in below, guys, in the comments what you all have to say about Bob Iger's approach to this. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to move.